I could see the not wanting to be an ally, but some of the antagonism is what really kills me. Now,
I'm working on being less antagonistic, okay?
no. You can work on being less antagonistic, but
Okay.
you're still perpetuating some of these things that Dr. Martin Luther King complained about that's perpetuating racism. Let me explain. So one of the things that you said, first off, like when we were having the reparations conversation, is you specifically said that reparations should only be for things that you were promised, right? Like for things that the government owes you.
Yeah,
That's
probably.
what we
Yeah.
should give reparations for. Okay. You're aware that we've already given reparations. Well, it seemed like when you asked about whether reparations were given to Native Americans, there was no pushback on that panel because it was all soft-boiled egg niggas. But like reparations have been given out to Native Americans, right? We're
Okay.
aware of this.
Yeah,
Like
I'm sure some reservations and treaties and stuff.
for hundreds of years, and it's not just in reservations. It's like literally direct aid, direct cash payments, literally free education, so on and so forth, right? So and land. So they've done all of those things. I can give you a list of just like all the various reparations that the United States has done, like for Native Americans. They've done reparations for Mexican Americans, specifically New Mexico residents who were like exposed to some sort of nuclear nonsense, whatever, and they end up paying them out.
Yeah,
Like,
what's the point?
the point is, reparations aren't necessarily based on things that people were owed. And then when you asked about the Japanese internment camps, because you remember they gave reparations for the Japanese internment camps, and your argument was, well, I mean, as long as they do it like kind of soon. They didn't do it soon. That was like 48 years later. So reparations have existed in this country, and it seems like literally everybody else is able to get reparations. But whenever it comes to black folks, all of a sudden white people start getting really scared about it. Like, I don't know, man, reparations it's too complicated. I don't like, how do we really justify? How do we determine? And I think
Okay,
that's
the
cool.
scope and scale would make it complicated, right? Like, how the fuck would you even begin to do reparations?
It depends on what the reparations is for. If you're going to do
For
reparations
slavery.
well, so,
That
okay.
remember that thing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hell no. That's exactly the problem whenever you start discussing reparations. 90% of the time, people want to jump to something, the most nebulous form of discrimination in this country, right? And then say, of traceable discrimination. And then you want to say, well, how do we do reparations for that thing? That's not the point. Let's do reparations for things like redlining, which the people living, such as my parents, today can say that they are direct benefactors of this discrimination, right? Why don't we do reparations for things like redlining? Why don't we do reparations for things like the GI Bill? Why don't we do reparations for things like reverse redlining,
That'd be
right?
cool. Yeah,
so those
sure.
are the things that we talk about. But what's crazy is white liberals like yourself are always incredibly resistant to it. The lines on whether or not we support reparations are
I'm
crazy,
not resistant
crazy
to any
different.
of that, okay? If you want to talk about, like, we should do reparation for redlining, like, we can look at the dog and shit, yeah, that sounds fine. I'm okay with that. We literally have, like, civil court processes for doing this, or, like, federal processes for doing this. I think there was, like, wasn't there a big case a while ago it was either for women or for minorities against Wells Fargo? Am I making that up? Where I think Wells Fargo had to pay a fuck ton of money because they had engaged in, like, basically racially or sexually discriminatory, like, loaning practices or something. I thought this happened.
Yeah. That's the reverse redlining thing.
Yeah,
but
sure.
then
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, people can do shit like that. Yeah, that's
that
fine.
ain't reparations. That's not reparations, and here's why. What the government does is they go to these companies and then they get these idiots to settle for nonsense, and then these payments don't directly go to the individuals who were harmed, and then the payments that they're giving because they're class action lawsuits aren't enough to actually offset the amount of wealth that you lost from the lost opportunity of actually getting a loan, from like your literal life savings
Wait,
that a lot of people spend
even
in order to foreclose.
Okay, it sounds like you're just coming here to give an argument about a particular type of reparation. I don't know if we disagree.
No,
on any of this.
that's not all. Okay, good. So then just to make sure that we're crystal clear here, so then you do 100% agree reparations are absolutely amazing. They should be given to black people for not just things that the country owned, as you stated on the panel yesterday. It shouldn't just be for things that the country said that they would owe people. Anytime the country itself does some sort of like crazy injustice, the country should be responsible for offsetting that injustice by things, and sometimes those things can be reparations.
Sure.
Okay, good. So then, yeah, I'm glad we finally converted one of these liberal, and maybe you can convince your audience to get on board with it too, since you have all this white liberal audience. Okay, the other thing that you said, previous conversation, you said that the war on drugs wasn't particularly racist. Do you remember that conversation?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, you stand by that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, why do you believe that, or what's
Because I
your
think the
foundation
impetus for the
that?
war on drugs was, from everything I understand, was that in black communities, drugs were destroying their neighborhoods and their communities, and they wanted tough action against it to see if they could get rid of it.
Okay, so the war on drugs was started by Nixon, right? Nixon, like that's when it was like it launched.
Okay.
John Earl Rickman, who was like the head of that department, literally said, quote, "You want to know what the war on drugs was really about? The Nixon campaign in 1968.
Yeah, I don't care. I super don't care about any of this. I know that you can. I think there's.
No, I got it. Okay, I got you. You don't care. Let me just go ahead and make sure we state this, so then you can just go ahead and be objectively
Let me go real
wrong.
quick while you read the quote about how it's to punish the Negro or whatever the fuck. Hold on.
I'll just wait. Go ahead and get your Red Bull.
Okay, you know that abortion, doesn't Margaret Thatcher say like abortion is to get rid of black babies or whatever? Does that mean we should get rid of abortion in black communities?
Okay. Let me go ahead and make sure I finish this quote, and then we'll go ahead
Oh
and
my
address
god,
that
did he actually not read the
absolutely
quote?
ridiculous thing.
He's actually...
No, nigga, because I want you to make sure that you're understanding and contending with it.
If MLK was here right now, he'd beat the shit out of you for being a bad faith interlocutor, okay? I just want you to know that.
Okay, sure. We're going to get into locutions later on, because that's actually really pivotal to this discussion about the N-word. Anyway, he says, you want to know what this war on drugs is really about? The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, anti-war left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities, we could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. So while you can say, there were broader societal ideas that might have been shaped by the media or whatever, like people were communicating to them to get people to be against these drugs and things like that because of some of the damages they were having in the black community, you can say that. But the war on drugs is a legal policy, and the legal policy was created by men, and the intention of those men was to be specifically anti-black. So yes, maybe broader society isn't using it in that way, but we're not talking about like how broader society feels about it. We're talking about the design and intention of the policy.
Okay.
Good. So the war on drugs is absolutely black. So you're wrong about that.
It might have started that way, but that's not what carried it on. It wasn't carried on by anti-black sentiments. And it's strange to think that something so racist and horrible could have at points in time been supported by black people, right? So clearly the conversation is a bit more complicated than saying, well, when this particular policy started, the guys were racist. That's probably true of a whole bunch of fucking policies. 100%, sure. Okay, but like that doesn't make the policy itself racist. The reality was that crack cocaine and drug violence and gang violence were fucking obliterating black communities in the 80s and especially in the early 90s. And well-meaning, upstanding, Christian, family black men at that point would have literally signed on to fucking anything. Cops all over their neighborhood, whatever the fuck, federal agents, whatever, to not have their families and their neighborhoods destroyed by drugs. That's why
it's insane to me that you would talk about the war on drugs and then talk about something that was happening in the 80s and the 90s when the war on drugs was launched so much before then, right?
Bro, we've had wars on drugs. Was it the 20s where we did prohibition of alcohol? The country's always been like pro and anti-drug, right? I'm pretty sure in the early 1900s we're making laws against like cocaine and shit, right?
Yeah, but we reversed that prohibition long before then, right? And then
yeah, sure. But I'm saying that we've been in a state of like legislating for and against like drugs throughout all of the fucking history of the United States.
Right, we have. So we've waffled on a few of these things. The thing that we have not waffled on specifically is the war on drugs, since it was instituted by Nixon, and the intention of that institution was specifically racist.
Nixon wasn't the first person to start legislating drugs. Maybe to call the war on drugs, fine. Whoa. And also, if you want to say that the war on drugs should be
policy to call the war on drugs, it's not just about whether other people had issues or things with drugs. It's about the specific policy, the specific intention. When we're talking about the war on drugs, to start roping in things.
Okay. Like Enjoyer.
Ja.
Things like prohibition are ridiculous. That's not the conversation. We're talking about the
if you want to.
So.
Wie traurig, dass mein Knie jetzt hier ist.
Das was?
Ja, mit meinem Knie.
Nicht besser.
Oder mal nach Frankfurt mit dem Fahrrad fahren, aber das wird wahrscheinlich auch irgendwie schwierig dann.
Ja, das wäre also ein bisschen unverantwortlich, wenn ich das an der Stelle mal sage. Doch.
Ja, aber das ist das Werk, wäre das schon verantwortlich. Das sind 160.
Oh, wenn, da sind ganz schön viele Wenns in dem Satz drin.
Da ist eins drin.
Und wie viele sind zu viel, Philipp? An der Stelle? Wie viele sind zu viel? 1.
Hasse dich.
Steig einfach in den Zug mit deinem Fahrrad, Nino. Das ist das Gleiche.
Ja. Nein, das ist völlig langweilig. Dann fahre ich lieber mit dem Auto.
Kannst du überhaupt Auto fahren?
Natürlich, Automatik. Schlinke.
Kannst du auch nach München fahren und dann fliegen.
Oh ja. Stimmt, ich muss nächste Woche nach München.
Ah, siehst du.
Nicht auf Montage fliegen nach Frankfurt.
Was?
Ja?
Direkt zum Aufbau mit, oder wie?
Ich weiß nicht, wie es plant ist. Wahrscheinlich schon. Weil wer soll sonst mit? Ist ja keiner da.
Ich geb
Aufbauen.
scheuche ich wegen Leute rum.
Da wirst du rumgescheucht. Du zum Aufbauen mitgehst, du hast keinen Spaß, ich sag's dir.
Umgestellt, ja.
Ah, ne, der Rainer ist schon wieder da. Der geht mit.
Hab ich!
Ach, nein.
Na gut. Flash Rifle.
Hab ich.
Ist euch alle. Hier kommen die Auto-Attacks rein. What?
Gut. No! Oh, kurz vor ihm. Ich will das nicht.
Tu so, als wäre ich eine Gefahr ohne Spells.
Ach Gott, jedes Mal. Doppelt. Noch gar nicht mit Hardcount doch.
No!
Wir haben ihn damit fast getötet. Ich glaube, es war schon.
Wenn ich ein Kalte wäre, er tot gewesen. Ja. Oh, komm schon! Okay.
You did.
200... 300 Damage hat mir der eine Spell gemacht.
Okay.
Schön.
Hab ich dran. Nein!
Okay, das habe ich besser funktioniert als hier, bin ich ehrlich.
Oh no! Ganz sicher, wie der nicht drauf sein konnte, oder?
Ah, komm mal, so langweilig.
Deck ist Neck. Gameplay liegt fast im Busch. Alter. Das glaube ich nicht, mein Freund. Das glaube ich nicht. Das ist ein Stun. Jump, 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 Mann. Warum? AP-Kaiser. So dämlich, man will ja über die komplette Map dashen, oder? Was ist denn das? Okay.
Drei. So hart.
Kaiser macht literally null Damage.
Ja.
Weil sie sterben und ihr Geld benutzen. Das ist nicht fair. Wer von denen hat auch nicht gleich dabei? Ja, die Kiana, natürlich.
Oh, das war ich.
Fuck you, Pumpkin. Holy shit.
Anmaschine, gell? Oh. Oh. Fehler wurden begangen.
Ich darf nicht ulten. Ich darf halt einfach nicht ulten, weil ihre Ult anscheinend schon aus ist. Ah. Jetzt schon wieder Ulti. Ja, komm. Ach komm.
Schön. Jetzt flashen wir den Boy an. Müssen wir nicht. Müssen wir? Oh, nicht der. Alle auch nicht der.
dumm.
Heißer, clear the way. Brauch nicht lang. Bin ich da?
Im Afrika wird dann quasi nichts. Auf der Bench stehen und ihre Spells werfen.
Manchmal reicht es. Oh, come on, really?
Low Gangplank.
Okay, das ist falsch. Bin ich an der Stelle. Ach, es hat 1000 Damage gemacht gerade, gell? Der Tam kennt allein.
Duncan seems a little bit fair.
Okay, dass das ein Hit war.
The superior tactic is to never give up.
Ja, da komme ich aus dem Goldenen und töte euch alle. Ja. Nicht erwartet.
known policy.
The war on drugs is not a policy, okay? It's an idea to have a bunch of policies collected under it. So if you want to say that there are people that started this concept of the war on drugs who are racist, yeah, that's probably true. If you want to say that we should get rid of the war on drugs, that's definitely true. But if you want to say that all of our drug policies today, because they stem from that thing, that
Ja,
some Nixon's
was?
administration
Würdest
are
du
all
gerne
racist.
mitspielen?
That's just is simplistic and not true.
Was
haven't
macht der in
spoken
Aram?
about what I'm saying.
Okay, so
and
you're
what I'm
just saying that
saying
when the
why-
war on drugs was
Normal
started,
spielen.
there were people in Nixon's campaign that had like
Also
racial
immer.
overtures or undertones, I guess.
Wenn ihr
I'm
5
saying,
Minuten gebt.
I'm just making sure it's crystal clear. The war on drugs, the
Boah, ich
intention
glaub, so viel
of
Zeit
that
haben wir noch.
entire collective of policies
Mm.
was specifically racist
Nino hat
intended
heute keine
by the
Zeit.
administration that instituted it.
Bitte?
That's what
Nino
I'm
hat
saying.
heute
It
keine
seems like
Zeit.
early
Grundsätzlich halt.
Nein.
earlier in conversation when we asked you that, you were like, no, it doesn't seem like, it just seemed like people are really
Okay,
just
it,
more
it can
so
be
of
honestly
anti-drug.
this conversation is so unimaginably inconsequential. Whatever will give you the biggest dopamine hit, you can say it is the case. But the answer to this conversation has no bearing on any part of any policy for anything in the entire United States. And if you consider it, you are damaging your ability to understand any part of the conversation either.
Oh, okay,
So if it
and
makes
that's
you
where
feel
we
better,
have the
if it makes you feel better to say like it was racist, that's fine. It's not racist today. That's not the main reason why people are anti-drug today. But if it makes you feel really good to know that there were bad, evil men in Nixon's campaign that really didn't like black people, then you know what, my dude, then you carry that forward, okay?
There goes
Beat
that
it
white liberal
proudly,
racism
okay?
again. So
Smack your
that
chest,
thing-
okay? And
Sure,
be like,
you're
yeah,
right.
they
Okay, so
were
here's that thing
racist.
that you're
I'm
doing
here to
where once
support
again
you.
you're
They were
dismissing- I got
racist.
you. Here's that thing that you're doing once again where you dismiss the actual racial.
I'm not
undertones of
dismissing
these
it. I'm
things.
telling you.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You're literally saying to me right now that no, people that has nothing to do with the policy today. Yes, there was racism that was behind some of the policies back then, and yes, there's some of those same racist attitudes are what are continuing to support the
No,
war on
no,
drugs.
that's not
as it
true.
is-
That-
as
so
it- as
this
it
is why-
either these black people. So you're not going to sit here
just
and
gonna keep
convince
going
me.
and going.
I got you. Yeah, you went longer than I did. You're not going to sit here and convince me that there are no people within our Congress and within our positions of power that still hold these racial sentiments that are okay with continuing the war on drugs as it is anti-black and disproportionately impacting black people. You're not going to convince me of that. Is that
Okay.
what you're trying to say?
Okay, are you ready for this one?
Oh, fuck.
Are you ready? I'm gonna ask you a simple question. If we got rid of all racist thought in the United States today, do you think we would immediately get rid of the war on drugs?
No, but I believe
Exactly.
What we do. No,
That's the
no. You're gonna let me ask you a question.
I want
No. Don't ask me a question and then hold me down to a thing. See, I'm doing the good faith thing of actually responding to your question, and now you want to talk over me because I wanted to
get
the
me
point.
up.
Gotcha.
What you got?
No, I don't think that would happen. But what I do think would happen is that the disproportionate effect of it being targeted and aimed specifically at black people would disappear. Then we would start seeing, considering the fact that whites and Hispanics use crack cocaine as often as black people, that black people would stop making up 70% of all convictions. When we look at the marijuana, when we look at the
Okay,
marijuana,
can you not do the thing where you just have to rattle off stats? It doesn't make your argument
not
better.
ra-
It's just you're just
Oh,
listen.
it does. It does. It actually substantiates
The
the
reality
argument.
is-
Clearly, hold on. Let me finish, and then you'll. It's not. It wasn't even that long. We would actually discover that all of these policies, where we see disproportionate sentencing, arrests, and charges for black men, would start diminishing, considering that blacks and whites use these drugs at the same rate.
The reality is that black people live in the types of communities and engage in the types of lifestyles that are always going to put them in the eyes of cops more than white people. White people tend to be older, they tend to be wealthier, they tend to live in areas that aren't being as policed as heavily. So even if we got rid of all the racial discrimination in the whole country, black people are probably still going to get caught more with drugs just because of how we're sorted socioeconomically right now. Does that make sense?
Sure, I think yes.
So if we acknowledge that one, getting rid of all the racism.
So now you're going to ramble on. Okay,
You ramble so much harder than me, okay? I'm trying to catch up, okay? I'm like 10 miles behind you, okay? All right, I'm about to sprint. Here I go, okay? Even if we get rid of all of the racist thought in the entire country, you acknowledge wouldn't have an impact on the war on drugs because the war on drugs is not about racism. It's about a lot of people that just don't like drugs for a wide variety of reasons. Number one. Number two, even if we did get rid of the war on drugs by some miracle, there would still be black people getting caught disproportionately, or got rid of things that aimed at racially. There'd still be black people getting caught disproportionately just because of the types of neighborhoods they're in, right? If I live in fucking West Hollywood, I'm never in my life getting caught for doing fucking drugs. Why the fuck would I? There's not cops driving through here like, raiding houses or looking for some shit. But if I live in some fucked up project or whatever where people are shooting and kill each other, where there's crazy shit going on, I'm more likely to just stumble into a cop that catches me with drugs, or it comes into my house, or comes into my apartment or project or whatever the fuck. That's just the virtue of how we're sorted right now. Like, it is what it is.
Okay, so you opened it up with something that was so asinine and ridiculous. even if we got rid of racism, it wouldn't impact the war on drugs. What I specifically said is it would impact if you would stop playing your freaking piano in order to be disrespectful so you don't have to actually engage with the arguments that I'm giving you and trying to interrupt me every second. You would understand what I said was that if we were to get rid of the racism, it would absolutely dramatically impact the war on drugs because there are racial implications of the war on drugs, specifically at overcharging black men for the exact same crime. When it comes to crack cocaine usage, maybe you missed this while you were hitting your terrible piano note. Black people and white people and Hispanic people.
Was wollten die dann gleich machen, wo wir hinkommen müssen, dann loggen?
Some sort of way, black people make up 70% of the charges and sentencing for crack
Das
cocaine.
musst du selber
Same thing with
rausfinden.
marijuana. That these things would actually start.
Muss nicht einfach. Oh Mann.
Outcomes for these actual things. Would there still probably be a slightly more arrests of black people? Yes, because obviously black people have more encounters with police. But the higher encountering with the police is predominantly because of drug-related stuff. That's the problem.
Silber
So
2,
yes, it would
Philipp.
absolutely impact it.
Ja, weil ihr Ranked spielen
What are you
müsst.
talking about?
Das war die Frage.
What the freak are you talking about, man? I think we should get rid of all of the systemic injustices. Okay?
Nein, ich habe dir eine spezifische
But-
Antwort
Okay,
gegeben.
I love
Silber
it.
2 Account würde ich.
Reductive, but sure.
Ein CO2-Account, ja dann kann ich nicht mitspielen.
Das hast du doch gar keine Ahnung. Du musst jetzt erstmal durchloggen und gucken, ob du einen Silber 2 Account hast.
I guess we can agree on that point.
Okay. Did you think I
Okay.
would disagree on that? Do you think I'm here to do
I guess,
systemic injustices? Okay. But
okay, I love it. Reductive, but sure. I guess we can agree on that point.
okay. Did you think I
Okay.
would disagree on that? Do you think I'm here to
no.
defend? Am I the racism defender who's logged in to?
No, you're just a racism perpetuated with your white liberalism.
Because my
It's
white
crazy.
moderacy. Okay. Let me tell you about
It's not
something
just
that you've
moderacy.
probably never heard of this. Okay. Have you ever heard of a little letter written from Birmingham, a jail cell that MLK was in? Let me tell you about that white moderate, okay? That's a lifestyle for me. I love it. I love
it.
I look at black people that are struggling and all I think about is listen. All I can imagine doing, I jerk off to putting a timetable on your freedom. That's what I think about. Like, you want to be happy now, but I want to wait 10 days because as a white moderate, that's just what makes me happy. Okay? We need a
Listen, you can do the silly memes all day, but it's like, here's the deal: you do have a particularly large platform, and the thing is, most people, myself used to be one of them,
Yeah.
really look up to you as one of the people who can actually express these ideas in succinct ways and actually combat like some of the racist ideas. But when you start perpetuating them yourself, right? Like
Hold on.
you start.
no, sorry,
Go
go ahead.
ahead.
Finish. No, finish.
No,
your
go
thing.
ahead. That's fine.
Okay.
Go ahead.
There are things that I would like to fix in this country, and there are ideas that I want to bring people over on, okay? I can talk about getting rid of the war on drugs through a lens that everybody can agree with. I can talk about getting rid of things related to sentencings in prisons that I can get everybody on board with, right? If you're a conservative and you think that black people's culture is fucked up, well, wouldn't the best way to fix that be to get more fathers in the household? And wouldn't the best way to do that be to get rid of every motherfucker in jail who's there on a fucking weed charge? Do you think it's more important to have a black father in jail serving some 1 or 2 or 3 year sentence for a third strike on weed? Or do you think it's better to have him in the household working each other, right? These are arguments that I can have with any person, okay? But when I have to have those arguments with people like you behind me screaming, well, Nixon said the war on drugs was fucking racist. And in front of me, I've got some conservatives who are like, I just don't want my kid buying weed in high school. You hurt me. Okay, and you make my job harder.
Yeah.
I don't need you to come and tell me or lecture me on what some State Department representative or some cabinet member of fucking Nixon's campaign said about drugs when that's not the reason why today people don't like drugs. It's not about racism, maybe a little bit. Maybe people have some associations with it. But the reason why people don't like drugs today is because a lot of old people just don't like drugs. They're scary. They think that when you smoke weed, it's like PCP or bath salts, and they don't want their kids doing drugs. So those are the issues that I'll speak to. I try to do what I can to get these things gone or to get people to agree that these things should be gone, but I do it in my way. If you want to lecture people about racism and how everything is racism and how everything is racist and white supremacist and then you can do that. That's great. Do it. Do it and you do
Gold
your
2, Philipp.
Was denn?
Gold 2 Account. Such deinen Gold 2 Account in den 300 Accounts raus, ja?
Ah ja, was ist denn los mit dir schon wieder? Ich bin immer nett und freundlich zu der.
Das ist Gold 4.
Das Gold 4 ist sogar besser. Oder schlechter.
Hast du vergessen, was besser und schlechter ist, Philipp? Jetzt verstehe ich deine politische Ausrichtung.
Ja.
sagen, was du willst. Das war gut. War gut.
Ich muss kurz aufs Klo einen Moment.
But that doesn't work when I talk to people that are already fully bought into my ideology.
Sure, and the thing is, okay. First off, you're saying that you want to talk about ways in a way to talk about things in a way that gets everyone on board with it. But the problem is, if your method of doing that is to dismiss all of the racial overtones and undertones and the racial reasonings for these things happening in the first place, then you're furthering the harm. The first step to actually fixing and redressing some of the issues that the government has done is to actually identify what the actual problem is. And when we try to dismiss these things and start saying things like, "Well, yeah, no, it's really not that. It's more of a class issue. There's a class war," and we're ignoring all of the racial reasons why these things exist, then we're not actually fixing the problem. Sure, you might want to get people on board, but if you only get people on board as much as it applies to them, then they're not ever going to do the things that would absolutely directly address the impacts, right? Reparations needs to be targeted. The whole concept of a rising tide raising all ships, it hasn't worked in this country ever. That's why the black-white wealth gap is increasing dramatically. They're saying black wealth should be decreased to zero within like 30 years or something stupid like that. So yeah, you can keep saying, I'm trying to make sure that things are appealing, but if you're doing so by literally denying the actual racism, then you're part of the problem. That's exactly what's happening here.
I don't think racism is a problem in this country in 2022. I just don't. I don't think it's a problem.
Okay,
I don't think it's keeping us from
exactly.
doing anything. We might disagree. I don't think it's keeping us from doing anything. Nowadays, like, fucking Republicans these days are okay with fucking gay people, generally, right? I don't think racism is the reason why we're having problems. I think we have problems for a lot of complicated intersectional reasons. I don't think it's because of racism. So when I talk about fixing these problems, I'm not going to talk about racism. I don't give a fuck, okay? If you want to talk about racism, that's your prerogative. That's fine. If you think I'm doing harm, well, then fuck me. I guess that's on you as well. But, like, I'm going to focus on
the problems don't even directly impact you. The problems directly impact black people as it is today. And to say, like, yes, maybe, like, and it's one of those things where you're dismissing the racism of the past and then not recognizing how that racism of the past is still directly impacting everyone today, right? If you have an entire
I recognize that it can impact people today, but if people today aren't
But then if
operating...
you understand that, why are you always dismissing the racism? Why are you always dismissing the previous racism and not actually pointing out how these things are impacting people today, and not and then that's why you wouldn't get behind the idea of reparations and things like that, which can actually offset the previous racism. That's the problem.
Sometimes in life, people make mistakes. They make stupid decisions and they fuck parts of their life up, okay? You might, when you're 18, decide to take 1 year off school. And in that year off school, you meet a wonderful girl, you get her pregnant, and you never go back. And now you're 24 years old, and you're wondering what you're supposed to do with your life. You've got a 5-year-old child, you're with a girl, you're working, you can't go to school, okay? The reason why you fucked your life up was a bad decision that you made 5 years ago. That is absolutely true. But if you fixate and overfixate and hyperfixate on that mistake for the rest of your life, you will always be stuck and you will never advance. At some point, you have to say, okay, that mistake was made. I acknowledge it, but I need to figure out what can I do right now going forward to fix things. It is an undeniable fact that even past slavery, even past Jim Crow, even past 64, civil rights and everything, even past our first black president, there are probably some racial issues that exist in this country today. But we cannot continue to fixate on the mistakes of the past and pretend that those mistakes are the reasons why today everything is continuing to be as bad as it is. We can acknowledge that we came from a fucked up place, but we have to be able to analyze what's existing today that lets us move forward rather than fixating on a past that half the country doesn't even want to fully acknowledge. Like I said before, I can get people on board with so many programs that would be better for black people, better for Hispanics, better for the entire fucking country, better for poor
Nina seine Rolle mitgenommen. Weißt du, ist er verletzt und jetzt nimmst du ihm auch noch seine Rolle weg.
Was?
Ja, ist nicht mal gemerkt.
War Nino Midlane, oder was? Ich glaube, was anderes spielen müsste, egal.
Gut. Johannes will nur hier wieder Salz verbreiten.
Das macht er immer. Einfach ignorieren.
Will den Hass schüren.
Ist ja, so verliert ihr einfach Freunde.
Aber den Hass zu schüren.
Ich versuche hier lustig und Frohmut zu verbreiten. Alles, was ihr machen könnt. Ich versuche zu zertrampeln meine Witze. Ja.
Aber nicht mit meinem linken Fuß ist kaputt.
Mein Rechter schafft es ganz gut.
Oh, Johannes. Warum hast du kein Gewissen?
people. But I can't do that if we want to obsessively talk about how horrible people were in Nixon's campaign. That's my perspective.
It's not just specifically talking about how horrible people were in Nixon's campaign. That only pertains to the drugs. Yes, Nixon did a bunch of other racist things, and Reagan also did things, and so did Bill Clinton. But the point of the matter is that specific thing is just when you don't acknowledge where something comes from or what the intention is, then you.
Morgen kommen alle Kranken und die bei uns im Urlaub waren wieder ins Geschäft. Heißt es, wird ein produktiver Tag oder ein langweiliger Tag?
Ich dachte, du machst Homeoffice.
Ich darf morgen keine ausmachen.
Sagst du immer.
Ich
darf aber echt nicht.
The previous Jim Crow laws, of the previous racism in this, systemic racism in this country. And so then we can say, wait, hold on. Then when we actually study these things, then we can see if they are still impacting us today.
Sure, but here's the problem, because what we're left with today are the effects of those systems. And right
you
now,
said something else really quick. You said also half the country doesn't want to acknowledge it, and I agree that half the country doesn't want to acknowledge it. But that's because a lot of times we're ignorant about these things. But then when you start saying things like I'm ready to abandon the phrase of abandon CRT, it's been whatever. You're basically allowing people, anytime we actually come up with an idea that would actually be helpful, you allow people to hijack, straw man, and misrepresent the issue, and then at that point say, well, yeah, it doesn't have any value anymore because people just hear what they want to hear. And so then anytime we actually try to do things to rectify the issue, you're arming the opposition with the ability to straw man and just remove it. And that's what you're doing.
There is a world where we remove all of the systemic injustices and where we get rid of all of the racism in the country, and we fix that and we acknowledge it, and we're happy with that, and black people are still fucked. I don't care about that world. That's not something I'm looking for. What I'm looking at is, what are the problems that we have today, and what are the best ways to fix it? Some of that fixing requires an acknowledgement of the past, but an overfixation
Wie
on
lange
it,
kann es
I don't
würde
think
dauern, ein
is
Game zu finden?
8 Minuten.
Sure, you can say that we're
Unbelievable.
overfixation, and I don't think I'm overly
Dann
fixating.
Philipp,
What
die
I'm
Gap
thinking
ist
I'm doing
einfach
is
zu
I'm
groß mit
accurately
Goldtrier.
recognizing that these harms actually
But
happen.
I'm dying
while
game.
I'm constantly encountering from both the overt opposition in the
Diese
form of the
Flex-Scheiße war
Republicans
einfach
and the
keine
covert
gute
oppositions
Idee.
from the freaking liberals who want to do every symbolic gesture they
Ja, oder
can
gäb's sie
while
nicht?
literally refusing
Könnten wir
to
jetzt nur normal spielen, oder?
Was kann, wie war das vorher?
Ja,
Teams gründen.
Ja, 5 von
nur
10.
Teams konnte.
actually acknowledge the issues. So yes, we know what can actually
Leute
fix these
gesucht.
problems. Yes, there's a word.
Aber jetzt sind wir mal ehrlich, wäre normal so viel anders?
We can get rid of all the racism and it would suddenly fix a whole bunch of issues and we wouldn't be running into, and black people would still be screwed over. Why? Because an object in motion
Text ist ein
remains in
bisschen
motion
serious,
unless opposed by an equal and opposite force. So, if you set people up on this trajectory, you've literally completely dismantled the black family, then yeah, you can fix all the systemic racism. But if you already have people who are set up and advantaged and you let those people encounter the system, then the people who are disadvantaged are always going to be behind. In fact, the wealth gap will continue to minimize and things like it already has. None of these policies that are supposed to be general, that can help everybody, none of these problems have ever actually fixed it. They only perpetuate the wealth gap.
What do you want me to say? We fundamentally disagree. Okay.
Yeah, you're just wrong though. That's the problem. It's like you're unwilling to acknowledge the fact. Okay.
Oh
so
my
let me make-
God! No,
Okay.
hold on. Shit, you're right.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm just wrong.
Okay, I got you. That's
What
why
was I thinking?
So yeah, I know. Here, I'll explain
Fuck, I'm
why.
so stupid. I'm just
I
wrong.
know.
What the
I'm
fuck?
glad you agree. I'm glad you agree. So then explain to me really quickly. Okay. So what
Oh
do you
my
think-
God, I'm
what
so
do you think the solution is to fix the economic disparities that continue to plague the black community today? What do you think it is?
What do I think continues to plague the black community, or what are the problems we need to
No,
fix?
what do you think the solution is?
Solving problems like poverty is really fucking hard. So I think the solution, it's got to be like a fucking 7-pronged attack, okay? One, there needs to be investment in black schools. There are a couple of things that just are so good for students. Every student in the United States should have free lunch. Full stop. Every school in the United States should have AC. These are like two things that like study after study shows, wow, when kids are comfortable, they learn more. Wow, when kids have food, they do better. Those are two things. Those should be made in every community in the United States, especially black communities, if they're not. That's one thing. Second thing, kick out everybody from fucking jail that is on fucking drug charges. What a worthless fucking bullshit piece of shit waste of time, okay? Most of those guys are probably black men, right? Disproportionately. Get them back out on the street, get them back in their homes with their kids. That's the second thing. Third thing, Economic opportunity, right? This is going to stem from the schooling thing a little bit, and it's going to stem from having a father in the household. But getting people like working jobs is probably a good thing. I think most black people, or at least most ones that I've met, would probably rather work a job than, you know, be on the fucking streets and shoot people for a fucking coat. Just from what I've seen, right? Maybe that's not true in your experience or whatever, but just from my limited anecdotal experience, there are probably other types of investments you can make in communities as well, right? There are certain communities that are super run down, the streets are fucked up, blah blah blah. Like when you ask me like how can we fix poverty, I can give you like 5 or 10 different like multifaceted solutions that would go towards fixing it. But the thing is, when I have those conversations, I don't, and maybe this bothers you, I don't have to talk about racism for any of these. You don't even have to agree with me that fucking slavery was bad, right? You might just think black people are shitty people. We might agree. We can even agree on that. Fuck it. Yeah, fuck black people. But wouldn't, if we did all these things, wouldn't it just be better for all of us? I could get people on those arguments. That's how I would approach the problem. And I don't think I would ever have to invoke the word racism to get people on my side to agree with it.
Sure, maybe not. Well, I don't know. People are still not going to agree with it because if you don't explain why we would be doing these things, then no one's going to agree with it. In order to say, hey, we need to do this thing, we're going to direct funds specifically in this area, then you're going to have white people who are going to feel like, wait, why are we aiming it specifically at black people? Why would we do this? It seems like kind of unfair. In fact, we're going to say that this thing is racism, as the nigga was saying on the panel yesterday. If you ever do any of these things and aim them directly at black people, then what's going to then all the people are going to sit there and say, no, this is racist to white people. So you have to acknowledge why you're doing that. There you go, hitting that piano again, huh?
I'm not even hitting that piano, but no, you don't have to say the reason why. You wouldn't say it's because of race. You say, well, because these communities are fucked.
Well, okay, but then when you do that, if you don't directly target the black people in these situations, because as we're seeing, a lot of these issues aren't just based off of poverty. Race is still a relevant factor. They are doing studies even recently where they said, hey, schools, poor white schools and poor black schools with similar amounts of students, the black schools are still receiving like about $12 billion less in funding annually, right? So this is a thing that's happening.
But that's the reason why isn't because of right now. It's not because of racism. It's going to be a confluence of other reasons. There's not an evil guy pushing a button who's like, all right, I've got the black funds here. I'm going to turn them down, and the white funds
Holy shit, this is a garbage team.
Communities that either have stronger supports built for them. They've got higher property taxes. They've traditionally been more engaged with the government, and those reasons might stem from racism. Sure, but
taxes. They said poor. They're similar to situated people.
Okay, well,
Actually in Deutsch eigentlich, ne?
getting federal funds. I don't think it's because some people like white people and some people hate black people.
I think so because you're in denial of all the race.
I am in denial.
Of course.
My white brother, not you, sorry. My white brothers aren't racist, okay? We're trying our best.
I got you, sure. Everything that you're talking about, as far as like prison reforms and things like that, sure. Like, I mean,
Ach, das ist gar nicht Z-Mitte. Oh mein
it
Gott.
won't rectify the economic issues that have already plagued people.
Okay, Philipp.
The country is bound.
Mistakes were made. Sind diese Z-Jungle-Epidemie auf einmal?
Das passiert halt, wenn man alle Literality-Items bufft, ne?
Okay.
Haben sie doch, oder nicht?
Ja. Diana wird auch wieder gespielt, das kann schon sein, ja.
Diana war sogar viable ohne den Buff.
Die meisten Assassins haben schon gesuffert in diese Ari-Talia-Matchups.
So. Aber ihr Casual Player spielt lest keine Patch Notes, ne? So ist das.
Richtig. Die invaden euch, oder?
Eigentlich schon, ja.
War Shen. Darks Level 1. Aber wir verlieren das hart.
Ja, ich mache ein Spell und renn weg. Eigentlich ist es ziemlich even, oder?
Level 1.
Dann hast du
Das ist halt ultra strong. Und wächst auch ziemlich strong.
Genau, oder?
Na, Shen geht, weil der muss ja nicht ranlaufen. Wenn er skillt, ist er halt Autotech, so. Vex und Bart machen allein schon 1v9 mit Stun und 4.
Du hast keinen Spaß in dem Game, ne? Das ist dir klar.
Ich, ja, wenig.
Eigentlich müssen wir Botlane gönnen.
Schwierig. Ich glaube, der ist nach einem Missplay der Tilt.
Ja.
Ein Nashville.
Nice, ich einfach abwarten muss.
Wir wollten Remade-Bot spielen. Er hat gefragt, ob der supporten kann, die Anif, die top ist.
Was der andere da gewesen. War das der andere, der das gefragt hat, oder was?
Ja.
Ich dachte, der Google Foto wollte ADC spielen.
Ja, der Google, was weiß ich. Lights. Google Slides wollte Support
Der
spielen.
Bart hat gerade unironically für einen Stun 3 Qs gefressen von dem Ezreal. Degenerate. Die Movement Speed hat Bart 330. Wie viel habe ich?
Geht alles ready, ich glaube nicht, ist für die Kill. Aber kannst mir einfach helfen, pushen, wenn du willst. Und auch ruhig Minions nehmen.
Okay. Was ist jetzt passiert? Ich verstehe. Der hatte gerade volles Leben. Ich war eine Sekunde warte. Er ist auf 200 Leben. Nach dem Pot.
Der Liga ist halt nicht so einfach, Johannes.
Der Bart war legit Half-Life.
Ja! Weiß ich nicht, vielleicht hatte der
Der
Stun Gun
Round.
plus Green Gun oder so?
Jetzt hat er es dann.
Das weiß ich auch nicht. Ja.
Venture off the beaten path.
Der Bart wieder unter Half-Life.
Der Set, wenn er gegen kommt, hat keinen Flash.
Bett kommt Mitte von unten.
Ja, danke.
Da auch.
Was ein Service. Die
Ein
Vex
Flash
moved
Bot.
da runter. Ah ne, nur gewordet.
Der Bart moved hoch. Wenn die Vex kommt, können sie dich.
The forest holds many surprises.
Hat halt diese Pflanze da ausgelöst, die Wischpflanze.
Ja, Fehler ist halt kein. Das kommt jetzt Bot, gell.
In der Mitte hat Ignite raus.
Ich verlor den nicht mehr. Philipp, siehst du das?
Ich habe halt gar kein Leben, aber ich komm.
keine Ult. Die Vex moved jetzt.
Sorry.
Take careful steps.
Heftig.
Glaub nicht. Ah! Ich troll. Macht die so viel Damage, starkes.
A promising garden.
What?
Ich sehe dich.
Ich. Then I'm going to get.
Venture off the beaten path.
Ah, er hat einen Freeze hinterlassen. Sehr gut. Steht.
Oh mein Gott.
Oh, du kommst nicht raus, oder?
Ben hat Ult geused doch.
Kommt wieder Bot.
Just a harmless fly.
Red hat keine Ult.
Er ist fast tot.
User joined your channel.
Hallo.
Hallo.
Na, Philipp, wie ist die Lage?
Gut, gut.
Fast AFK?
Hm?
Ja. Echt, ich habe euch beide nicht gehört.
War nichts.
The forest.
Dann vielen Dank für deinen Willkommensgruß, Johannes.
Bitte.
Ich sehe ein tenses Game an.
Entschuldigung.
Hier fehlt, aber müsste auf dem Board eigentlich laufen. Nice Mitte.
Such a busy world. My prey thinks it's so clever.
Halt legit nichts machen, ey. Die muss einfach nur Spells holen, ne? Ein da, 9. Oh, die fehlt, lul. Ah, ne, Moment. Alter. Ja, die Warded, die spielt Ultra Death. Ich glaube, lohnt sich fast nicht.
Wort bekommen. Oh.
Gerade das irgendwie alles Miss. Muss eigentlich Bot sein. Ah, ne, stopp, nur Moment. Schön. Das ist ein Tilter für die. Rex können für beide Seiten laufen für Ult. Er ist unten, oder? Sonst würden die niemals aggressiv laufen. Ja, geh weg, geh weg, geh weg. Geht ultigen Mist. Sorry. Die den Kill gekriegt oder die anderen?
Keine. Müsste ein Execute gewesen sein eigentlich.
Ich glaube nicht, oder?
Also sie hatten auf keinen Fall gekriegt. Ich hab sie aufgehalten.
Der Aphelios hat den Kill gekriegt.
Schönes Ding.
Was ist denn da auf Top-Lane bitte los?
Na, ich kann mal nicht diven, ne?
Während
Was ist das?
Ankündigung.
Warum Max Jones Second die W? Ist die eh nicht so strong?
Warte.
Oh, believe the shit. Die Wechsel läuft die ganze Zeit da in den komischen Busch.
Oh,
Über Drake.
Ist tot. Ist tot.
Nee, nee.
Doch, doch, der ist down.
Kommt.
Oh, da könnte alles runterkommen. Hier nie via portet.
Bin da, ich hab Ehre ready.
Ihr müsst aufpassen, wenn Vex da. Ah, ne, Vex ist in Mitte gegangen wieder.
Dann net dive, net dive. Oh, das wäre big. Okay.
Oh, hier ist was bei mir. Du wächst wahrscheinlich.
Dann move.
Und der Bart.
Ja, ich kann sie nicht canceln.
Geben wir jetzt den Drake ab.
Nicht nett, oder?
Ja, die zwei sind immer noch am
Sind
Bot.
zu viert?
Shen hat Ult raus auf mich. Aber der ist jetzt auch da in der Nähe. Vex hat keine Ult, kein Ignite.
No.
What? Hat die so spät noch ein Reset bekommen? Das ist cringe, der Champ.
Wir haben ihn? Sehr gut. Ist fein. Ist noch nötig, oder? Okay, das ist ein bisschen bitter.
Das ist nach 14. Minute, juckt euch nicht.
Hat der Drake gebläht. Der hat keine Ulti.
Oh, da kommt alles.
So much more to see.
Holy shit, hat die wieder schlecht gespielt. Und die wird dafür nicht mehr gepunished. Boah.
Bin schon auf 60 Farm, also puh, muss noch Angst haben. Das ist schon eine Macht, der Typ. Ja, top, ich komme auch. Oh, ups.
Ich wollte ja Assist geben, aber.
Ja, ich wollte auch nur Assist nehmen, aber.
Da war die euch eigentlich, ja.
Nix.
Ja,
Kommt noch irgendwas? Ich glaube, der Felix.
Things aren't
Hm.
what they seem.
Bin gerade nicht so strong.
Bart bei mir. Bart da im Jungle.
Geht euch, gell? Nett.
Ey, jo.
Aber die Shadow geht euch, gell?
Ach Gott, das Eis wieder. Oh no.
wie lange darf die das halten? Das ist ja Frechheit.
Ewig.
Das war jetzt nicht so solid von uns.
Sie Arzt nehmen.
Da ist Hisha unter dir, diese Pfütze.
Ich hätte Next Drake und dann.
Ah, so. Der Shen fuckt ab, Mann. Der hat mich aber jetzt schon 3-mal gekillt, Mann, mit seinem Dreck-Ult, Mann. Da hat auch, Mann, die Vex. Hier auf First Go nicht die Ult, man ist selber instant tot. Hm?
Bart hat flashed.
Oh mein Gott. Boah, schöne Ult. Ja, Broken Champions muss man spielen.
Kind of fair.
Sogar echt nicht gut gespielt, ja. Schlechter Flash.
Der erwartet, wir kriegen den Mid-Tower.
Things aren't always what they seem.
Die Baron.
Hä? Was hätten die da immer ab? Wo haben die mich gesehen, dass da 3 Leute... Ja, alles gut. Hino, du Arsch.
Come closer. An enemy has been slain.
Hino trollt.
Ja. Oh Gott, sind alle Botlane und eine Porte einfach raus, oder? Oh ne.
Nee.
Die ist sick gewesen. Einfach rausportet. Trotzdem free.
The forest holds many surprises.
Ein Shen-Bild. Okay, okay, es ist einfach ein No-Item-Shen-Bild.
Oh mein Gott! Oh. Die machen Schaden, Jungs. Muss aufpassen.
Such a busy world.
Fast
Der
weg,
Shen
fast.
will halt unbedingt den Tower da oben haben, glaube ich.
Wait until my You have slain an enemy.
Eine Ult.
An enemy has been slain.
Immer AFK.
Schön.
Warum macht er nicht S-Will meinen kompletten Jungle?
Die sonst useless, maybe.
Statt auf irgendeiner Lane zu stehen und.
Venture off the beaten path.
Jetzt ist er weg, mein Farm geklaut.
Aua.
Bitte.
Ja, jetzt reicht's mal viel, dass man. Top.
GG.
Surprising.
Irgendwie haben die am Ende gar nichts mehr, oder? Na, so weit weg stande? Okay. Ich glaube, diese Sejo hat ihr Bestes gegeben.
Das wollte ich schon auf dem Gold 2 Account, oder?
Was jetzt ein?
Ja, zeig rein.
Ich glaube, die schiebe dir ja schon ein bisschen Elo in den Arsch, sagst du, wie es ist.
Capitalism, which is a beautiful system, but that means that you need to have money in order to achieve the success that you need. So that means if you have money, like for example, you interact with something like the bail system, right? If you have money,
Will ja nicht
people who are
mitspielen.
able to bail are less likely to plea out and things like that.
Gerne schon AFK, oder?
Hat sich muted wahrscheinlich.
Jan!
Unfreundlich, diese Menschen heutzutage.
Ja.
And then they're not losing jobs and things like that just because they can't continue to work while they're waiting for whatever sham trial to happen, right? So when you, but that cash bail is going to harm people who are like obviously impoverished. We already can see that there's a difference between poverty-stricken Black people and middle-class Black people as far as college attendance, as far as wealth generation, as far as all of these things. So it's not just race. Sure, it would probably be like a confluence of like race and economics and other social factors, but if you sit here and deny all of the race, then you're going to continue to perpetuate some of these problems, because even those people in the middle class Blacks are still experiencing some of the problems that are directly related to race.
Okay. Where do you want to go with this? We're not going to agree. Fanatic, what do you want from me? What do you want from me? I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
When white people talk about racism, it's hard because it doesn't affect me, okay? And I don't truly see non-white people as human as I do. So it's hard for me to empathize. What am I supposed to say?
Yeah, what you're supposed to say is you're supposed to actually educate yourself on these issues so that we can actually have a more informed talk. Let me explain why. When you're talking about like freaking what was it, redlining?
Yes.
And you have no idea what the freak redlining is.
I didn't know everything about you're right,
no,
dude. I only know two famous Black people: Malcolm X and Martin Luther King.
No. Don't try to misrepresent it that way. It's not that you didn't. It's not that you didn't know everything.
I couldn't name a single Tupac album, dude.
It's not that you didn't know everything about redlining. You can try to resort to your means because I got you red-handed in 4K. You didn't know the fundamental principles of what redlining was to begin with. You didn't even know that it was the federal government that was doing it. But it's okay. That's why Fanatic's here to educate you. So look, it's really simple. Redlining was something that was done by the federal government, not the banks. The federal government decided, hey, we're having a problem. We're in the middle of a freaking a housing crisis, and we're trying to offset the poverty that's affecting white people. And that's what they did with the New Deal. So the same thing that we're talking about, if we actually understand what happened before, we can actually recreate these things and actually this time do them for Black people. So what they did was they ended up coming up with the zoning areas, determining who they could loan money to, and then they decided everybody who was neighborhoods that were Black or really close proximity to Black neighborhoods could not get this funding, while they continue to give these houses towards give these houses towards white people. The government didn't directly loan the money. The government insured the loans that were directly loaned by the banks. The banks had decided to tighten up and weren't going to be loaning money to anybody. So the government got on board and said, hey, will insure your loans to make sure that you don't lose capital, but you can only loan to white people. This is where white people started generating all these massive amounts of wealth that they're still experiencing generationally that has been compounding today. Black people never had access to that. So if we acknowledge the racist history of the redlining, then we can say, as a country, we did owe black people this. We did owe black people the ability to actually pursue their dreams and have the pursuit of happiness in the same way that we did white people. Then we can actually come up with policy that says we should aim this directly at the black people who were negatively impacted by our racist history. That's why we would need to acknowledge the racism so that we're not just sitting here twiddling our thumbs, running around in circles trying to figure out how the hell to fix a problem that we don't even know what the cause is. But you don't even know that history. You had no idea.
I didn't know all the history, and I'm glad you told me. I feel
No,
like
the
you've educated me.
fundamentals.
I didn't even know I didn't even know the fundamentals. Okay.
Absolutely.
I thought
you
the
can say so
redlining.
minimally, but you
I
knew
thought
that.
when people walked in the bank, there were guys that had giant fucking markers. And when they saw black people, they drew a red line across their forehead and it meant don't loan money to this guy. That's what I thought it was. But now I know. The federal government making districts, saying that you can't have people moving in here that look a certain way, and then banks were following suit. That's wild. I've learned something today. Okay.
Okay, and then it didn't just stop there. As they were
Okay.
also doing that, they
Yep.
also created these subsidies for people who were creating all of this federal housing and these giant suburbs. And in those subsidies, the requirement was that you could not sell these houses to white people. I mean, you couldn't sell these houses to black people. And at the same time, while they were doing that, they built these large plants and plants.
Can you link me? Just link me your GoFundMe. Okay, I'm ready to contribute. I'm sorry. How do I make it right?
Look,
how do I make it right?
Look, you can always go ahead, lauren.riley@gmail.com. That's how you can go ahead and donate to the PayPal. But my point being, so this thing, if you don't understand, genuinely, if you don't understand like what the history is, then it's so easy to dismiss why we would need a specific racial correction, because these were specifically targeted racial policies, that are the racist policies. That's the problem.
Okay.
Do you not understand that?
I don't deductively agree with your logic. I think we can fix all of these things without even knowing where they come from. But that's going to send us back into a loop. But you know what? Maybe you're right. And time will tell. Or the Republicans will
Ja,
tell when Trump loses the next election and they have a revolt.
Johannes, ich habe ein gutes Geschenk für dich gefunden gerade.
Du schenkst mir in meinem Leben nie was. Ich habe
Was
noch nie
hältst du
was
von-
von dir gekriegt.
Was
Ja.
hältst du von einem Rucksack, der bulletproof ist und da drin, das Bulletproof kannst du rausholen und dann als Schild benutzen. Das ist extra für Schulkinder in Amerika.
Der ist alt, der Witz. Der ist ganz alt. Hä? Das ist der Vivaldi-Witz.
Willst du das Video sehen? Der
Den
Waffenladen
gibt's. Ja, ich weiß. Das ist trotzdem ein Witz.
Ich finde den cool.
Aber ich gehe weder noch zur Schule, noch lebe ich in Amerika, Philipp.
Ja.
Trifft auch bald.
Und schwarz bin ich auch nicht, ne?
Weiß ja nicht. Bei dir auf der Arbeit, wie ich das höre, da hassen dich einige mittlerweile, glaube ich.
Ja, glaube ich, ja. Aber ich glaube, es gibt noch Leute, die mehr Kast sind.
Nein!
It's Jack's business.
Ich will nicht. Get me out. Oh, der hat sie weggebannt, jetzt habe ich kein Champion mehr. Ich wollte ein bisschen AFK sein.
Philipp, du bist Last Pick oder so. Ich lasse den nicht für dich offen für Last Pick.
Also wenn jetzt nochmal sagst, kriegst du Serafina, ne?
Hä? Mach doch.
Ne.
So, ich meine, das ist nächstes Mal ein Champion, auf dem du untiltbar bist. Wenn du auf den tiltest, dann weiß ich nicht, dann kannst du nur noch Yumi spielen.
Oh, Yumi ist... Ah, die ist auch mal schade. Ja, ein bisschen viel AP für Serafina.
Das ist egal, Philipp, pick die Serafina, das ist nicht so wild.
Ich glaube, eigentlich nur wieder Zeit, dass ich ein bisschen Inter, oder?
Ja, ein bisschen Heimer, komm. Hä, das ist actually kein schlechter Pick.
Geht eigentlich. Ich bin relativ melee. Sera Support oder ist das? Ah, ne, ist ja Mumu Support.
Oh, ja.
Ne, keine Ahnung. Was ist das?
Hey, Scheibe Jungle Amumu Support.
Ist Scheibe Top. Wird richtig
Ja.
beliebt. Das habe ich auch schon gespielt, das fühlt sich richtig was dann. Ich hab einen Darius im One-on-One auf Level 3 gemacht.
So. Ja, kann schon. Was hast du erzählt, Philipp? Ich wurde rüde unterbrochen.
Nix. Ich hab gesagt, ich bin traurig, wie ein Cola-Keks.
Sind wir eigentlich von Seraphine auf Kaiser kommen? Das ist Ignite dabei, gell?
Ja, ich mag gerade noch Runen. Schon.
Okay, das nächste Mal gebe ich dir keine Hinweise mehr. Ich gebe dir einfach keine Hinweise mehr.
Boah. Eigentlich müsste ich hier Glens spielen, aber ich bin zu dumm für Glens.
Sagst du immer und ist einfach Bullshit.
Ja, aber das wäre das absolute Smurf-Game für Glens.
Ja, spiel's doch.
Ja, aber ich bin zu dumm für Glens.
Ja, das sagst du immer.
Ja, aber es ist halt legit so.
Es ist
Ja,
halt
das-
legit nicht so. Ich
Ja,
weiß nicht,
das
welche
letzte-
Games du spielst.
Ich hatte das letztens einmal dabei, da habe ich einfach zweimal gar nichts geglänzt.
Ja, wahrscheinlich von 30 Cleanses.
Ah.
Stell dir
Ich
vor,
am
ich
richtig
ignite manchmal
ängstigen.
auch Leute, die nicht sterben. Heißt es, ich sacke die Ignite?
Ja, eigentlich schon, ja.
Okay. Dann natürlich, dann hast du vollkommen recht.
Dankeschön.
Ich muss sagen, Philipp, du triggerst mich leicht, ne?
Mein Tipp ist, you can't play a team game without a team. Don't be a leaver.
Ja, Philipp, die wisse, dass du letztens im TS gesagt hast, Alter, wenn du nicht mitspielen würdest, würde ich legit AFK gehen.
Ich wäre echt AFK gegangen. Die Audacity von dieser Eve, Alter. Und die einfach Level 3 mit der Lane FF.
Die hat Double Buff gegeben, gell? Und hat noch Farm genommen irgendwann.
Die hat Farm, jetzt das Problem war, die hat Farm genommen, hat Double Buff gegeben und Woli ist hinter den Turm gegangen, hat mich gecancelt.
Und du, die hat so viel Glitch, die muss so lang da gewesen sein, dass du über ein Level hinter dem warst.
Einfach over, aber die, keine Ahnung, was die Ari gemacht hat. Die hat einen Roam gemacht, der sogar geklappt hat, nachher sind die wieder Roam
Hä, war
gemacht.
es nicht eine Talia?
War es Talia? Ne, ist doch gleich Ari, ja? Oh, die könnten invaden, ne? Doppler Mumus dann mit dem Shit.
30 seconds until minions spawn.
Ja. Steht da ja auch nicht, ne?
Ich sag's ja nur, ist mir gerade auch erst aufgefallen. Kinda late. Ich frage nicht, Dark Harvest ist doch eigentlich immer schlechter als Meteor, oder?
Immer, ja.
Ne?
Also es gibt manche, aber es sind wenige. Ich glaub,
Ja, Baby ist Jungler oder so,
Timo
oder?
und Brand.
Ja, aber Timo will auch eher eine Lane-Rune, der spielt halt mittlerweile Presty.
Ich muss skillen, gell? Ich muss locker können.
A promising garden.
Was, Momokyo oder was? Ich glaube, wenn die dich trifft, bist du ziemlich over manchmal.
Ja, locker.
Ja, es geht halt eher um
Egal,
Level
es ist
1.
Shitpflanze.
Venture off the beaten path.
Die wäre uns cheat.
Meinst du? Alle Missing Top Lane war instant da.
Ja, aber die hat Slow und er hat Doppelstop. What the fuck? Also ich hätte uns fight.
Ja, wäre auch gut gewesen. Die hat aber EQ geskillt. So die Schlauste. Aber auf jeden Fall Level 2 Secure, das Big. Ich mache jetzt nur langsam.
Muss in der Q, glaube ich. Oh. Im Block?
Aber wenn wir bis Level 3 kommen, Full Life, sag ich zu. Ich dachte, da ehst du.
Hm?
Ich dachte, da ehst du, wo die so richtig weit vorgelaufen ist gerade.
Das Problem ist, wenn ich gegen Amu meine E rauswerf, dann all in dich halt. Jetzt könnte
Ja,
ich
waren
jetzt
halt in der, standen ja in der Wave. Weil der Sonne-Pussy das hätte gerade auch reingehen können.
Top, Jungle ist top. Oh, der Herz.
Ich glaube, ich gehe hier einfach Bade.
Lass mal mich warten, halt du deine. Wenn du für Lane nutzt.
Ja, der Boy nimmt nicht richtig viel Schade, ne?
Oh,
Hat
ich
der
schon.
W gemacht?
Nö, ich hab gar nichts gemacht. Der W hat 30 Sekunden Cooldown am Anfang.
Kann es ja hier pushen lassen.
Kann auf jeden Fall nicht warten.
Hier kann kein Wart sein.
Jetzt kommt das. Alter, boah. Das ist unlucky. Warum würde er da warten?
Nino wie ein Buch. Oh, hat noch einen Pot.
Ich hab mich treffen lassen.
Wow, wie krieg ich denn da? Das ist schon mal.
Schade. Schönes Ding.
Wir lassen das pushen, oder? Nicht? Okay.
Ah, doch, du hast recht, ja, eigentlich. Ja, wir gehen jetzt back.
Ja.
Aber das Problem ist, wenn die MF da ist, ist es in, ne? In die MF steht. Okay, dann ist back.
Ja, ich hätte wahrscheinlich länger bleiben müssen.
Ach, tatsächlich, ja. Einer von uns, naja.
Du warst so delayed, ich wusste nicht, ob ich dann auch canceln muss.
Aber war gut auf jeden Fall.
Ich meine, ja.
Beeindruckend. Cassidy führt in Form gegen Xerath.
Xerath schießt wahrscheinlich die ganze Zeit nur auf Gazadin.
Auf jeden Fall starke Aktion von ihm.
Muss ein bisschen Sinn, oder?
Ja, ich gehe gleich die Front, aber der hat halt Ding dabei. Minion Dematerializer. Aber ich passt so. Ah, ne.
Sass. Nicht wartet? Auslauf, oder? Das ist doch irgendwas der. Okay.
Ein Joke.
Bleib mal ein bisschen hinter mir.
Ich hab Double Putt noch running.
Die Dark.
Xerath.
Alle drei gemisst.
Ich hab den Amumu
Der Jungle ist hier irgendwo. Ja, gerade mein
mit einem Pot bewerfen.
Bei mir.
Ich kann
wir
nicht
können nichts machen, Nino.
Ich push
Ultra
raus.
low. Push mal, ja. Ich guck mal, ob ich Nino da rauskrieg.
Ich bin raus, aber ich krieg einen Drake. Was ist denn da? Die Kiste ist nicht mehr da. Mit der Kills würde ich
Aber
sagen.
es ist big, ja.
Nur nicht in. Ich hab dich, wenn der kommt, dann bin ich da.
Oh, die State ist echt dumm. Wenn ich wieder da bin, können wir sie da helfen. Ich weiß nicht, ob das werf ist für dich, Nino, so lange zu warten. Kannst auch so vielleicht einfach probieren. Jetzt.
Okay,
Ja.
einfach.
Ja. Aha. Oh, schöner Cancel.
Oh, Diego ist auch hier.
Oh.
Noch ein Stück.
Ja, ich glaube, Nino ist draußen, oder?
Geh auf den Diego, ne?
Haben, oder?
Der hat 0.
Ja, hier auf Wave, ich komme noch nicht hinterher. Komm einfach mit auf Wave, machen wir 6 und einfach mal die.
Ich bin 6. Da bin ich da.
Bots sind einfach passt.
Mach mal Q auf die. Oh.
Oh Gott, da bin ich 0-2 schon. RIP.
Schade, wenn das. Das ist Mitte.
Ja, we don't care, oder? Gerrit. Das will der machen. Ich glaube, wenn der kommt, der töten wir einfach.
Ich gehe doch da noch eine Plate, oder?
Mach 13, jetzt mach ich 43 Damage.
Wart hier.
Ich hab Ult ready. Take mal meinen back.
Der hierher kommt, stirbt. Ja, ein Big. Wird so richtig stark sein. Ich hab keine Ult, ne?
Wenn der unten sagen wir. Diego.
Mhm.
Also.
Ich hab Exos.
Der ist 6.
Aber im F ist nicht 6. Mach einfach das gleiche nochmal.
Diego ist oben.
Jetzt hat der andere Dach, der möchte.
Ich sehe halt so leck aus, ne?
Holy shit, sind die. Horny würde ich das nennen, wir müssen. Die Obersting. Kannst du direkt? Kannst du direkt? Ja.
Oh. Der blöde Xer.
Der hat Ober Herald aufgehalten, ihr könnt First Tower nehmen. Nino, du musst bei ihm bleiben wegen dem Xerath. Ah, ist Mitte, okay.
Weggelaufen.
User disconnected from your channel.
Aller direkt weg.
Hallo, Momo.
Ah, Jan.
Ja.
Helf mir!
Machst es alleine. Ich möchte das Gold nicht klauen.
Du kriegst das Gold eh.
Jupp.
Aber du hast Gold nehmen. Ich bin Flash, ich bin da. Ich bin ultra strong.
Ja, und
Ja, ist fein. Ich hab nur gedacht, weil es die geht.
None will escape my grasp.
Break soon. Gucken, ob wir den nicht
My
bekommen.
presence is so clever.
Oh, mit ist richtiger Gangbang.
Shut down. Wait until
Mal hier, oder? Die kommen hierher. Flash ready, Ult ready, Ignite ready und ich bin Liandris. Müsste, gell.
Ne, ich glaube, wir können nicht. Schon too late.
Take careful steps.
Komm, Nino. Oh, ich brauche hier Vision. Okay, das ist schön.
Ja.
Vielleicht, dass man das.
Konnte man eigentlich nicht in Combat verwenden. Musst du Mitte?
Ja.
Ein Null Scheibi. Hm. Schwierig.
Der will wohl Mitte bleiben.
The forest holds many surprises.
Ich habe irgendwie gewartet, von unten kommt irgendwas. Als er nach unten gesprintet ist.
Push mal die Wave unten raus.
Venture off the
Ja, ich bin neben dir. Gib dir Vision, Philipp.
Ach, geht.
Quit Game.
Ego ist mit leer.
Diego ist bei dir.
such a busy world. So much more to see.
Diego ist Mitte.
Ich mein, ich war an meinen Red Buff gemacht.
Oh.
An ally has been slain.
Okay, hab den Damage nicht erwartet.
Take careful steps.
Auf jeden Fall irgendwie um den nächsten Drake Fight, wenn es geht.
Ili als ob. Wow, ich krieg gar nichts.
Wer hat der Kassadin genommen oder was?
Ja, das hat die Rap bekommen. Red Buff hat der Ego bekommen. Oh, Diego ist low.
Ja, aber der geht einmal in Jungle, ist wieder full. Aber Shyvana ist gerade top. Echt die stärkste von denen. Aber ich brauche halt so lange aus der Base, ist der Wahnsinn.
Backtrack.
Ich müsste starten, Vigo top. Bin gleich in Ult Range. Bin jetzt ungefähr in Ult Range. Ich habe keine Ult, 8 Sekunden. Gangbang gerade den Garen.
Nebel.
Kann ich mal abwalken, Alter.
Fuck it, Mann. Deswegen kriegt halt da unten auch gar nichts, oder?
Glaube nicht, ne.
Nee, er kriegt halt nichts. Ist ja komplett nutzlos.
So toxisches Game gerade.
5-mal auf den Tower gekloppt und dann.
Wir müssen halt rein und die sind so strong, ne? Die stehen halt da, die Shyvana. Das müssen. Der Kassadin tut anfangen weh zu tun, ne? Der Xerath hier. Ist halt einfach impossible to play. Eigentlich 1-3-1 spielen, oder? Hoffen, dass die auch splitten.
Fehlen so Garen kann ja nicht. Und wir wollen irgendwas machen, oder?
Ja, es geht, ist eigentlich mir egal, da muss nur irgendjemand hochziehen. Ob das gewinnt oder nicht, ist mir.
Das ist halt einfach.
Ja, aber meint.
I'm sorry.
Einfach der bessere Spieler.
Hab ich wieder alles.
Let die wartet.
Warum ich da halt legit nicht hingehen, ne? Die Schelle ist der Wahnsinn. Über dir ist Xerath. Boah, wenn du den mit der E triffst.
Shyvana Sport.
Ich will ja unbedingt den scheiß Turm hier haben, aber den kriege ich nicht mehr. Alter! Boah. Oh, und schon mich einfach was.
Da kommt von unten.
Weil der Xerath ist der einziger Damage, glaube ich.
Der Viego macht doch gut Schaden. Den Beth wollte ja schon auch nie unterschätzen. Wie kriegt die da unten doch never, oder? Aber vielleicht können wir genug runter, dann können wir mit Tower nehmen.
Der Momo ist auch hier unten. Oh mein Gott. 3 unten.
Diego von oben.
Ich hab gedacht, der Kessin hat Damage. Der Kessin hat gar nichts. Wahrscheinlich nicht worth it.
Venture off the beaten path.
Ja, wenn ihr zum Drake rechtzeitig da seid, maybe. Aber seid ihr nicht, ne?
Ja, da stehen dann die Gegner. Wieder herkommen.
Always what they seem.
Das Shyvana ist top. Da kommt er niemals rechtzeitig hin.
Ein Wort.
Such a busy world.
Mein Gott. Haben wir Echo?
Alter, ich dachte, der Flash ultet mich. Warum ultet der nicht?
EMF ist fast down, steht aber hinterm Pip.
Das Ding.
War das da?
Die Shyvana trollt richtig hart von denen, oder? Wenn die zweimal da ist, können wir beide Male nicht contesten.
Wait until
Gut bekommen, oder? Gerard.
Down, schön. Können wir Baron machen?
Glaub nicht. Maybe, wenn zwei unten auftauchen würden.
take careful steps.
Bist du mit?
Nee. Haben uns gesehen.
Keine Warts im Pit.
Come closer.
Den Blue Buff sneaken, oder? Ja, Wege unten und MF. Aber Ding ist hier, Scheibe. Immer noch zwei.
Der Xerath ist respawned.
Hatte mir nicht einfach und Turner?
The forest holds many surprises.
Okay. Nicht, Nino. Ich mach dir 0 Damage. Ich hab Flash für den Xerath.
A promising garden.
Da ist ein Wort.
Nichts.
Wir kriegen halt nichts gerade.
Kein Wart im Pit.
Kommen alle daher.
Venture off the beaten path.
Ja, die Wolle.
Things aren't always what they seem.
Er talkt davon und pusht dann die Wave unten nicht durch, anstatt den scheiß Tor, dem Scheibe ist unten.
Such a busy.
Ich hab halt keine Warts mehr.
Keine Ahnung, so ein bisschen wie das Game. Siegen geht nicht wegen Xerath.
Nicht Ulte.
Ja. Oh mein Gott, ich bin am Trollen.
Nein, 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 ist fein. Noch ist fein.
Hier ist man so hart Troll. Oh, heftig. Ja.
Wir gehen Mitte durch, oder? Wir können keinen Baron machen, würde ich sagen. Der Xerath, wo ist der, ist die Frage.
Der ist 1 AP, hat keinen Flash.
Okay.
30 Sekunden auf Drake. Vielleicht mit Tower und Drake.
Ah, ich hätte gar nicht braucht, nächste Welt.
The forest holds many surprises.
Eine Warts an Drake.
Der hat keinen Flash. Maybe abuse.
Okay, der wird fast weggestoned.
Der tot?
Nee.
Oh mein Gott, ich bin bad.
No, ich hab ihn.
Ja, wir haben. War trotzdem bad. So, Momo.
Philipp, ich bin ewig weit weg, ne? Kann ich anflashen hier?
Beide anderen sind ultra low.
Oh, okay. Viego ult raus. Ich hab nochmal Stunt.
Oh, die Garen ist full life. Beide rausgegangen, die Mates. Wo sie full waren.
Akzeptiere ich da unseren Tod einfach, Philipp. Mit Flash und nichts machen.
Ist Level 16, wieso hat der Angst vor dem Viego?
Gary, du.
Garen seems fair as well.
Ich glaube, Garam hält nichts von dem.
Ja, ich glaube, Garen hat einfach jetzt so Dinge erreicht.
Xera hat immer noch keinen Flash, ne? Also wenn du den anflashen kannst, Chino, go for it, ne?
Oh, chill, chill, chill.
Anulten kannst du nicht anflashen, so.
Wartet.
Ja, wir können es einfach starten, glaube ich. Dass er den kann flanken und sie dann killen. Meldet das Ding eigentlich.
Ziemlich viel rauskalte. Kassadin ist bei mir. Mit reinrennen. One-shottet die Waves?
Ich sag ja, dieses Shivana-Bild ist geistesgestört. So disgusting strong, vor allem wenn die Drakes kriegt, dann ist die so tanky. Hier einfach Ende.
Ende.
7 Sekunden auf Xerath. Ja, müssen noch. Glaube ich eher beide Nexus nehmen sollen. Ja, wir haben nur einen Nexus, oder?
FF.
Ja, nice.
Ah, die Tower meinst du?
Die Tower.
Ob irgendwann clean gespielt, ey. Jetzt steht Gang, der die Botlane ziemlich vernichtet.
scary as hell to me. It's gross. All right. The other thing that you said, poor white people don't feel their privilege, right?
That is
That's a
something
pretty
I
stupid
said.
take,
Yeah.
right?
No, I don't. I think that's true.
Okay, so then let's go ahead and attack that.
Okay.
When you sit here and you say stupid stuff like poor white people don't feel their privilege, it's like taking a macro issue, right? It's taking like something like that's a more broad issue and saying that people don't feel that at the personal level, and of course they don't. No one would ever do that. It's so unintelligent, right? If we were talking about like people's contributions towards the war on towards the freaking hole in the ozone layer, right? Like you wouldn't sit there and be like, yeah, you don't feel that when you go ahead and I don't know, whenever you use this aerosol can. Like, of course not. These issues are more broad societal issues, and that's the way that they're impactful. There are always going to be exceptions to the rule, but you're not supposed to feel these effects. You're supposed to acknowledge and be aware of these effects. You can't necessarily feel discrimination unless you have like a comparison, right? Like when my mother just recently refinanced her house because of the crazily low interest rates, and they were being racist and trying to give her low comps as they commonly do to black people. She had to generate her own comps, so she had to go and say, fine, let me find other similar houses, yada, 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 and show them like, okay, and I have these upgrades on my house. Y'all got to give me a better deal. They still wouldn't do it, and she ended up having to leave that company and go into another one to actually get the refinance there. But maybe she might have felt like or thought, there was a racist thing that was happening here. But very often, without some sort of comp, in order to compare, you don't know that it's racist. So in this case, like that's why they're doing all these sting operations where they have black people whose homes are getting appraised incredibly terribly, and then you have white people that go say, okay, I'll do the exact same appraisal for the exact same property. We'll just put up white pictures instead, and then you increase the value of the home by 25 to 50%. Without doing the second part, the control group, if you will, without doing that, you'll never know that it's racist. All you can do is go off of what you're experiencing. But why would you ever try to talk about systemic issues, broad issues at a personal level? That's stupid.
But when you attack people for their that's kind of what you're doing. That's why I'm just saying it's bad to go to an individual and be like, hey, you should feel bad for your white privilege. Everything you're saying is true, but people aren't conducting like double blind studies to see like where the racism is or isn't. People don't engage with life on a personal level that way.
But first off, yes, if you're attacking people, like general, broadly, white people for their privilege, then yeah, maybe that makes sense. But most of the time, it's not like black people are going around just necessarily attacking individuals. The only time that they do that is when the individuals are being instrumental in denying the harm that's actually happening to
sure, but I'm just saying
people.
It's probably just never a good idea to attack an individual and be like, hey, like you have white privilege, when like a lot of poor white people probably don't feel that way, right? That's the equivalent of like a black person complaining about shit in the United States. Like, hey, bro, you're lucky to live here. Because that is fucking true, but probably not a good response to any kind of argument, right? Like,
okay, yes, but the problem is when you have white people who feel like they don't have that white privilege, they're just wrong. And that's why we need education. That's why we need CRT. Because again, these feelings can't really be identified unless you're talking about broader studies. Because whenever we're talking about this discrimination or these systemic issues, we're not talking about individuals. There have always been some wealthy black people. Jay-Z's worth like close to $2 billion. That doesn't mean that systemic issues don't exist. And maybe you might say, oh, black people have lower education rates. That doesn't mean that I fall under that category, or black people's credit score. That doesn't necessarily apply to me, but that doesn't mean that I don't understand these things at an intimate level, which is why we need CRT. When you defend the way poor white people feel as opposed to the actual systems that are engineered against black people, it seems like an unfair dismissal. Do you not understand that?
I'm not trying to discount the experiences that black people have. I'm only talking.
But that's what you're effectively doing.
Well, then fuck me, I guess. The white moderate strikes again. What can I say?
I know,
At the end of the day,
crazy.
I'm tribalistic. They look like me, okay? They look like me. How can I not take their side?
Yeah. So that's the problem, is I think very often, like, and I think in the same way that, like, you have this criticism about Vosh, but I absolutely think it applies to you as well, where, like, a lot of times, like, Vosh is, like, employing these arguments because they make good debates for him, but it's not necessarily because he believes in any of these things. One of the most deplorable things ever was after Derek Chauvin was, like, sentenced, Vosh literally said on his stream, he did a gesture and said, we all did this. We all did this. As if he had some direct impact on why Derek Chauvin was convicted, and then said, and it's glorious, I'm going to be debating about this over the next 6 months with conservatives. He didn't care about the actual injustice and the relief that black people feel when it feels like there's finally some sort of systemic, like, or there's some actual convictions or justice for some egregious injustices that are happening, right? He didn't feel that. What he felt was an economic opportunity, like brought on by him debating Republicans. I think that's disgusting. And I feel like a lot of times when you've had these debates, and I've always appreciated because you've pushed back against the most egregious racists of all time, when you've done that, it's like, man, this dude's really, really good at that. But then when you start actually digging into it and you find out that you don't actually know any of the things that are, you don't really know intimately any of these stories of, or the policies or what exactly is happening. You might just study, do a study or two in order to determine like, oh, this supports my argument. Then it hurts a little bit because it's like, dang, man, I really looked up to this guy. I was hoping he was one of the, he was the one, and you're not.
Nobody makes the jump on the first try. Okay, I'm sorry.
But why do you try to make light of it and make it such a comical thing when I'm like literally like genuinely telling, I'm not. You've given me the opportunity to come into this space for like 2 years.
Yeah.
I've come in here maybe a total of 5 times. I'm not in here just trying to grab some content.
I don't think you are. I agree. I understand, but we have like
I'm making a general appeal to your decency, and it seems like you're willing to make a joke.
Hold on, no, you can't say I'm appealing to your decency to get you to logically agree to some argument. That's a little bit underhanded, my friend. Okay.
Oh, am I?
Well, yeah, of course. You can't appeal to common decency as a way to convince me of an argument.
Well, no, it's what the appeal to decency is to get you to take some of these things a little bit more seriously, so as to prevent some of the further harms that you're causing. But every time I point it out to you, nah, you're not, bro. You and I both know that you've like, look, bro, come on. Don't
no, I do.
Here.
I'm not gaslighting you. I consider all perspectives. This will be something that weighs on me. Say I get like fucking 6 more emails and all black people are like, yo, it's true when you do the blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, fuck, maybe I'll weigh this in the future. Maybe it'll be a little bit different. But right now, if somebody would ask me, do you think we pay a little bit too much attention to privilege, or do you think we don't pay enough attention to privilege? I would say, societally speaking, and where the common discourse is, we have hyper fixated on it to a cancerous amount, where everything has become white supremacy, everything has become colonialism, everything has become, the remnants, the ghosts, the echoes of slavery and Jim Crow. And it's like, holy fuck, like we are paralyzed. We cannot have any conversations about moving anything forward in this country because we want to obsess over what's happened in the past. Like, people are more concerned trying to figure out like how old Pocahontas was when she was raped by fucking John Smith or Christopher Columbus, whoever, than they are figuring out like how the fuck do we fix our schools today? Or how the fuck do we get people to like function in society without being drug dealers or getting locked up in jail? And I don't know, like that hyperfixation on the past by a bunch of fucking middle class, upper class people that are going to, UC schools is like, well, fuck, what the fuck is the point of this? Like, all of their rhetoric is dribbling down from their ivory league towers, and then it's toxifying the common discourse, and now we're like on the verge of a fucking civil war. So it seems like that's just been a bad path, and I'm trying to look for something different. But my path might just be, crouching white man, hidden moderate, and maybe that's all I'm doing at the end of the day. Looking over my back for that Birmingham jail to see Martin Luther King sending ravens out, warning people about me.
I don't like the idea of like attacking the idiots in like academia and on Twitter and stuff like that, and like as if those are the only arguments. I think the argument that I'm presenting to you, and the arguments that you're giving, right? Like you're on the ground level, like talking to people with really huge platforms. You can give these arguments, and these arguments don't have to be hyper fixated or like construed some crazy psycho way. I'm not talking about the age of Pocahontas or any of that kind of nonsense. Most of the time, the things that I'm talking about are things that literally have direct impacts on people living today, which is why I've always avoided slavery. Man, I should start playing the piano when you're talking because I'm so much better at the piano than you, and you know it. But I think like when we start looking at things like again, redlining. My mother, redlining ended legally, even though there were still like packets of it, in 1968. The house that my grandmother left to my mother 3 years ago was impacted by redlining. That affected her inheritance 3 years ago. That's still impacting people today, right? Like, so I'm not just talking.
I didn't disagree with you. What do you want me to? I'm not disagreeing.
Okay, good. So then I'm not. So then these conversations can be centered around real, impactful things, and you don't have to retreat to some of the more nonsensical things that you're comparing it to, like the age of Pocahontas.
What is it? Hold on.
Colonialism in freaking Africa. What?
Let's back up for a second. What are we even disagreeing on right now? Can you tell me?
Okay, so the few things that we disagreed on. First, the thing that we disagreed on was you like pretty much implying that the war on drugs was not racist. One, from its inception, it seemed like you were originally saying until you got educated, and then two, that there are no racist bad actors that are perpetuating the war on drugs with racist intent in power today. That was one of the things that we disagreed on. The second things we disagreed on was that reparations should only be for things that you're promised, even though now I'm pretty sure you're aware that the money that the United States gave to Holocaust survivors, even though we're not literally we weren't the ones that did the Holocaust. The money that we gave to Mexican Americans, the money we gave to Native Americans, and so on and so forth. If all of these reparations that we're doing aren't about wrongs promised, so that just seems like you're choosing to create a frame for reparations only as it applies to Black people, as opposed to looking at saying what we've historically done, what reparations have historically, what the purpose of them have been, and saying that we can do those same things for Black people. That's one of the things that we disagreed on. Well, I mean, I don't know if it was a disagreement because you really didn't have an argument for it. It was the redlining thing. You were just wrong about it, and I educated you. That's it.
Thank you for the education. Okay.
Yeah. Another thing that you said. Let me see. Hold on. I think I had two more. When I was talking about some of the things that like Black people, like the reason why like riots and things like that happen, you said the only thing that we haven't tried was voting. Do you remember that?
Yeah, because people aren't like voting enough, and it's probably not good that they're not voting enough. Something,
Okay. So, what would that mean then? That if all of the people who did vote, like that they would have some sort of right to riot? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I'm just saying that like there's like the meme comic where it's like we've tried nothing and we're all out of options. Where it's like if we want to change certain policies, voting is the way to do it.
But what if what if Black people have been voting? Again, what if there was like 60% turnouts, right? And they still weren't able to achieve the thing?
If there were 60% turnouts during local elections and things weren't changing, it would blow my fucking mind.
Yeah. So, and again, let me make sure that we're clear here. So any Black person who did vote in those scenarios, since they voted and they did their job, then now they have the right to riot?
No, I mean, that's not how it works. What do you mean? You have to get lots of people to vote. If one person goes and votes and everyone else doesn't, it's not like that person go right. I mean, they've got more like moral justification, I guess, but like, or maybe they can feel a little bit more responsible. But like, no, I mean, what
it sounds like, because when we're talking about the people who are rioting, who feel like completely disenfranchised, like the government is not working on their behalf and seems like it's being harmful, you were saying that these people don't have a right to riot.
They're mad because they're not getting the outcomes that they want from the government in a democratic institution.
Philipp, wenn du dich wartest so falsch, geht's ins
All you
Bett.
can do is vote.
But
Like,
it's not just about the things that you want, it's about the things that are just, right?
No, fuck
like, for
justice.
example,
That's up for debate. We live in a democracy. What is
well,
justice?
sure, of course it's up for debate, but I know that you would argue that there are some people who would have more purchasable arguments about justice, right? Like you would be able to say, look, you can say that it's not unjust to have a system that basically says Black people are property, but you can argue that that's just, but we all know that it's not. And any person who recognizes that injustice has all of the agency necessary to go ahead and do whatever they feel necessary to offset that, right?
We're getting into dicey territory where we're trying to say some people's moralities in a democracy is so good that they have like the right to like enact violence because they're not getting the like the desired electoral outcomes.
Let's not take it to the riot part yet. Let's just make sure that we're establishing the fact that some people have more foundation for the arguments of their belief of justice, right?
I probably would agree. There's some forms of morality and moral systems that are more justifiable than others. Probably, yeah.
Absolutely. So then if a person happens to be subscribing to one of those kind of moral systems, like saying something like, hey, I'm not property, or you just simply saying, I'm not going to do business with Black people is really unjust. So the other white people could say, no, I have a freedom and it's just for me to do whatever the freak I want to. I would say that a person probably has a better ground to stand on in like indicating that this is not justice, right? And if that's the case, then those people get to make arguments and now their feelings are not unfounded in feeling like the system isn't working for their behalf, right? No. So you're saying that, okay, explain to me why that's not right.
It's a total non sequitur, right? You're here. Let's look at the celibate. Some people have better moral systems than others. True, sure. That's a really right. But we'll say that's true. 2, people with the better moral systems are voting. 3, they're not getting their desired outcomes in the electoral process. Conclusion, therefore, they have a right to feel like the system isn't serving them and they're getting fucked. No. You're not guaranteed any outcome in a democratic system. It doesn't give you a right to be violent if you don't get what you want. No, even if you are coming from a better place.
But is there belief in your own system?
Oh, that the system's not working? No, that's not either. That's not true. No, the system, the way the system works.
No. Is there belief? That's not the question. Is there belief that the system is unjust and is enacting injustices against them? Is that a valid feeling?
No,
Is that a valid
that's part of
belief?
it. I mean, you can always feel like people are being unjust against you, but I mean, like, that's how the system works. It's what it's supposed to do.
Right. So is their feeling again, or is their belief that the system is enacting injustices against them well founded?
Sure, I guess in the same way that if they voted against another person, maybe that other person feels like there is an injustice. I guess, but sure.
Okay, so this is where the problem is, because you keep trying to like play fast and loose with feelings versus like well founded actual arguments, right?
No, hold on.
Because
There is
yes,
no
any person-
well-founded actual
Okay,
argument.
sure. You can say that there's no well foundation for them, but any person with a working brain listening to this right now can tell there's a difference between saying, "Hey, I am recognizing that there is an injustice happening at a systemic level, or whatever." Like when they say separate but equal, but they know that the things aren't equal. We can recognize that as something that's being unjust, and then trying to compare that to, well, white people feel unjust, feel that it's unfair when you allow black people to go to schools with them. These two things are not the same.
I agree that they're not the same. I don't, like you're trying
That's
to
what you're reducing it
You're
to.
trying to build an argument right now where you can provide a justification for some group of people to feel like if they don't get the desired outcome at the ballot box, they can feel oppressed by a government. Like, and it's not even the worst argument, but like this is taking us down to libertarianism, where the state is always enacting some form of oppression against you. Like,
No, I'm not saying that the state is always doing that. Again, I'm not sitting here. I'm not some freaking. I'm not. What's that one? Fabian Liberty idiot. Like, I'm literally talking about like, hey, do people have just because what you said in the beginning was that people don't like no one has a right to feel like the system is being unjust to them, basically, and you're wrong. Obviously, you obviously people can feel like not only feel, people can have well-founded arguments to support the fact that the system is working unjustly. Hell, the government has redressed some of its problems, saying, hey, these things were unjust. So yes, people can recognize that even in a democracy, people can enact legislation that is unjust.
I don't know what you want me to say. I don't even know what the fuck we're arguing about right now. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah, it's because it's one of these things where you're arguing all of the most banal points because you just don't want to get to the conclusion. It's insane to me.
Which
You
is
literally
the
just
conclusion?
argued. You literally just spent the last 5 minutes arguing basically that people don't have that people can't have well-founded claims of unjust systems as long as it's democratic.
I'm just saying that it's not to the point where we can. If we're getting to the point where we don't like our democratic outcome, we could like enact violence for it because we feel like there's a great.
I'm not talking about the
injustice.
writing yet. I'm just trying to establish that first so that we can get to the next point.
You can always feel like the system is unjust against you. That I would agree, but like that's what a worthless statement.
Okay, yeah, it's worthless. So my point being, yeah,
Like look at Roe v. Wade. You can always feel like there's an injustice regardless of what side you're on. Like of course anybody could feel like there's an injustice, but I mean that's part of living in a democracy. The state's always gonna be fucking you somehow.
Sure, but then you just need to make sure that your arguments are well founded. And some things I think are not as easy to argue against, right? You would say that there are some things that are so on their face that there are no real purchasable arguments against them.
If it came up to vote, can we lynch black people? And they voted yes, and you were like, Destiny, don't you think that's a little fucked up? Don't you think they have a right to feel fucked up? You know what? I'd be like, hell yeah, dude. Let's fucking march. Let's go, okay? Let's grab I got a new shotgun. Let's go. But when you tell me, when people are disagreeing about the exact ways that say reparations should be dealt with or funds should be allocated to schools, and then the voter turnout in the local election is 25%, don't you think those people have a right to feel like they're being oppressed? Yeah, I guess, but it's way different. We're at so many levels removed of like severity and obvious wrongness that like this conversation is so lost in the weeds. I feel like I'm Airbud on that island after the kid dropped him off and he started boating away. I can't see where the fuck I'm going.
Sure, we'd probably get there faster if you weren't sitting there and trying to debate me on every small banal point as opposed to letting us actually get to the conclusion. Like you're literally so defensive on every single piece of information that you literally just argue that people don't have any justifiable arguments for people to feel like a system is unjust as long as it's democratic. It's crazy. And then what was the other? Then when you look at places where like voter turnout was like incredibly high, right? Or here's a better example. Let's look at someone like Asian Americans. Their voter turnout is so incredibly low, right?
Is it really?
20s and 30%? Yes.
Why? Damn.
It always has been. Their voter turnout can be sometimes in the 20s
Blood
and 30%.
sex with Prince
if they don't get the
Andrew.
same outcomes. So I don't think voter turnout is the thing that's really the biggest determining factor on whether or not you're going to get economic justice in the system.
Well, that's probably because depending on where you come from, if you're an Asian American, you probably don't need the help, right?
Well,
So it's a different type of thing, yeah?
Well, the reason why they don't need the help is because one, they are already viewed as a model minority, so they already get better opportunities. And of course, yes, like if you're migrating and you're wealthy and all those other factors. But the fact of the matter is, we can say that voter turnout isn't even one of the leading determining factors on whether or not you're getting economic justice.
Maybe. That's a
maybe.
We gotta.
Maybe?
Here's a question. If I could push a button right now, okay, simple question to cut right through the bullshit. Okay, I've taken my scythe out. Okay, you ready? I'm coming into your garden. If we could push a button right now, and all of the voter turnout in the United States would say the same, except for black people. Their voter turnout turned up to a 100%. Every single motherfucking black person was voting, okay? If that was the case, would you expect to see policies in the United States start to change or no?
If we're going to stay in the current state, no, I would not. And the reason is because Democrats...
I totally disagree.
I got you. Let me explain why, and then maybe you can see if you disagree. The reason is because... if we're going to...
Every single motherfucking black person was voting, okay? If that was the case, would you expect to see policies in the United States start to change or no?
If we're going to stay in the current state, no, I would not. And the reason is because Democrats...
I totally disagree.
I got you. Let me explain why, and then maybe you can see if you disagree. The reason is because Democrats in this country have historically been able to count on black votes. I think they said black women are like the most concentrated voting bloc in the country, in the sense that 90% of them, 90% of black women vote Democrat. So then, when black votes have been so concentrated in the Democratic Party, and they've literally not given us any tangibles or anything that actually makes sense, then no, it doesn't matter if all of us vote. They don't have any reason to do so. Why buy the cow with the milk is free, right? So no, I don't think that would change anything. There has to be some sort of...
Hold on, to be clear, 95% of black women don't vote.
I like this car. Is this your car?
Yes.
Well, you know what? I'm buying it. I need it fast. I'm buying it.
You're buying my car.
Here's a check. Thanks.
Oh my god. Wow, well, just let me get my kids out of the back.
Now, wait a minute. I don't have time for this. These are your kids?
Yeah.
I'm buying them too.
You can buy my kids.
I'm buying your kids too. Whoa, look at the zeros. Buy me.
Bye, guys. Be good, okay? I love you. Mommy will email you, okay?
Oh, Donald Trump just bought a stranger's children. Hello, kids. I just bought you.
Who are you?
What, do you live in a cave? I'm Donald Trump. I'm the biggest. I'm the best.
I'm scared.
Don't be scared. Look, here's $12,000. That'll take care of your fear. Don't have fear. By the way, whose car is this? Whose is it? I like this car. Is this your car?
Yes.
Well, you know what? I'm buying it. I need it fast. I'm buying it.
You're buying.
So, ich gehe jetzt ins Bett. Gute Nacht. Viel Spaß euch zwei.
Nacht.
Disconnected.
Black women don't vote. So it's a fundamentally different
No.
point, but...
I'm not saying 95%. So no, I don't think that would change anything. There has to be some sort of...
Hold on, to be clear, 95% of black women don't vote. So it's a fundamentally different point, but...
I'm not saying 95%. What do you mean 95%? So you're saying only 5% of black women vote?
No.
That's what
I'm saying. You're saying of the black women that do vote, 95% of them vote for the Democrats. I'm telling you the voter rate for black women though is not 95%. It's probably
I'm not
like
saying that.
20
That's
or 30.
not what I said.
Oh, okay, but I'm
choose
just
my words very carefully.
I know, but I'm just saying so it's not relevant. I'm saying if 100% of black people were voting, you don't think any of the policies would change.
So